So for those of you who don't know, Luis Elizondo is here with us today. Luis is the former director of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, ATIP, the secretive Pentagon unit that studied UFOs. As a senior counterintelligence officer for the Department of Defense, he operated through Afghanistan, the Middle East, and Latin America. He's a trained special agent who has led countless tactical and strategic missions, both during wartime and during times of peace. The one, the only, Luis Elizondo. Welcome.
Thank you, guys. Luis, ¿cómo está mi amigo, mi hermano cubano? Encantado.
And, good day, sir. ¿Cómo estás?
Gents, I'm doing great. How are you guys doing? Michael, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Lou, and it's great to have you. And we've just got so many people who are here who are excited to hear you. You know, you spend so much time doing the work that all of us wish we could do more of. So we want to appreciate you and extend you that level of respect and appreciation as we hit you with some hard questions.
Well, guys, listen, it's my pleasure being here. As I said before, this is my last interview, and so of this week. So I plan to celebrate. I will probably be having a beer or two, or perhaps even three after this. But it shouldn't stop anybody right now from, cracking open a beer or perhaps pouring a nice glass of Chardonnay and cuddle up by the TV and watch us talk a little bit.
Speaking of, I got some sweet Arizona peach iced tea.
Yeah, unfortunately I'm talking about wine and beer. I'm actually drinking water,
I know.
So.
Yeah, I'm just extending my show to Arizona peach iced tea in case they want to sponsor it. Right. So, Mr. Elizondo, let's start here. Seems like we've won, right? Disclosures happen. It's over, right? We can all go home, pack up our bags. We're good here, right?
Not quite yet, my friend.
Not quite yet.
If that was the case, I certainly would be, as I've told people, I'd get weird and disappear and go into the mountains and nobody ever see me again. No, but you know what? We're every day we're getting closer and closer, and it's not. It may be one of the things, kind of like falling into a black hole. You're never quite sure when you go beyond the event horizon until it's too late. I think we may be very much the same way. We keep saying, when is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? But if we look back to 3 years ago, we are actually in the middle of it right now. I think a lot of people, because this has been a more gradual process, people are still scratching their heads. They're like, hey, wait a minute. Did we just have disclosure? I think we're in that process. But before we begin, let me do a quick, if I may, shout out to just to you guys, but your production crew that's making this happen. In particular, you've got some rock stars there. I of course rather be Squidding being one of them, but also Cristina Gomez and some of those folks. These are the folks that are carrying the torch, like you, Luis, and you, Michael, for the next generation, and really making this conversation happen. As most people know, I am quite technically challenged. I need my daughters and my wife to use my keypads because my fingers are too fat, and I get frustrated. But you guys are the ones that are leveraging this technology, this incredible way to communicate and reach out to people, and it's making a huge difference. So please, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for what you guys are doing. Thank you for beating the streets and making this conversation happen. This really is a grassroots movement, and it's beautiful to witness this as it's growing and it's evolving, and more people are coming under the tent. So again, my hat's off truly to what you guys and gals are doing.
Well, hey, we really appreciate it. Thank you. You inspired us. This starts with you and Mellon and all of the guys at TTSA and all of the scientists and pilots and service members and Navy men and Air Force men and women. You guys are a lot of you guys I've found, especially in the last few months, are frustrated. You're angry. You want some answers, and you're trying to ask the people who hired you for some answers, and they're kind of not answering questions, not answering inquiries, and not taking things seriously. And
well, that's going to change.
Yeah,
that's going to change.
I see that. I mean, I see that. It's clear. It's so obvious. It's that's why I said it's over, right? Like, we've got nightly news, we've got 60 Minutes, we've got, the New Yorker, Gatti Schwartz, the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. Like, these magazines are sitting on some very important tables, around DC, around New York City, where decision makers and policymakers live.
We can't fail them now. Now
no,
that they've
absolutely
decided
not.
to pick up the torch, they've got to know that they're reporting on the right thing. They're taking a huge and enormous risk going out and reporting this in mainstream media. And this is for the first time they're kind of stepping out of the airlock, right? And they're kind of going out into the great unknown as far as a journalist is concerned. So we need to make sure we take every opportunity to thank them and recognize them for taking those chances. Just like you're taking the chance now, having this conversation on the podcast, a journalist is taking that same risk every day that they publish a story. I had an interview today. I won't say which one. And I talked to the journalists after they stopped recording the interview. And I thanked them. And I said, look, thank you for doing this. He said, look, for 2 days leading up to this interview, I took a bunch of crap from all my colleagues. They were sending me memes of little aliens and, really giving him a hard time. And, of course, it's in the name of in jest, right? It's kind of like, oh, we're just having fun. But it's a little bit more than that. There's some vindictiveness there. There's a little bit of, hey, are you sure you really want to do this? So I just want to, just take a second to say thank you to all those journalists out there, the Brian Benders of the world, and the Tim McMillans and the Debrief and MJ and everybody out there, Gatti, who's doing this. This is a non-political issue.
I always say on this show, it's a bipartisan issue. It's an issue that anyone could come to this table and have a conversation. And I always say that it's a table where if we all just sat at for, say, an hour or two and started talking about this topic, and then, maybe the topic switched to something else, maybe we might find some other things that we agree on. Right. So I love that it's a bipartisan issue, and that's what we push all the time. And we always also try to say, the starting point for this conversation now, and this is just the pure fact that there's things in our sky. Our pilots have chased them. They've caught them on radar. It's been seen apparently for decades. They've shut down nuclear facilities. They're real. There's something in the sky that's real, that's unexplained, that's not Antarctican or Russian or Chinese. It's, it's something it's that diamond in the rough, and it's there, but we don't know what it is. Anything past that or under that foundation is just not valid, at least not yet. So thank you. Thank you. Thank all of the journalists. I mean, like the Debrief, I love those guys over there. They helped inspire a lot of what's happening. So from the bottom of my heart, I think it is important. I think we definitely should thank all of these people, because without them, this conversation wouldn't be here. But you're right. This is just the start. Like the big phone home, we're doing that again. And next year it's going to be bigger. It's going to be more impactful. And the conversation is going to be had. Period. Full stop. When, I hope soon. So I guess let's start here, Lou. Sure. I really want you to explain this cigarette analogy for me, if you can. You've used it a few times where you describe this cigarette as time. Can you run us through that real quick?
Yeah, sure. Let me start beginning with Newtonian physics, and I won't spend much time, but I think it's important to understand the context and how we have to shift our thinking when we're looking at space-time. So during the Renaissance, you have this gentleman, Sir Isaac Newton, who all of a sudden is able to quantify and qualify the observations we have in physics. Force equals mass times acceleration, have all these wonderful little neat mathematical formulas that describe the physics that we experience here on Earth, like gravity, the apple falling from the tree. And it's in a very real sense, it's physics in a physical sense. And then all of a sudden, several hundred years goes by, and some funny cat with crazy hair comes along who failed the third grade and was a patent clerk, and proposes that the universe in which we live is not, in fact, linear at all. The universe we live in is a lot like think of a rubber band that can be stretched and compressed. and that the notion of space, the three-dimensional space we live in, is inextricably tied to a fourth dimension called time.
Right.
So we have a three-dimensional space, XYZ axis, in which we can maneuver, and time being a function of the fourth dimension. And that very notion that space-time is flexible. It can be stretched and it can be compressed. That's really hard. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think of it as a sphere that just constantly moves outward. That it touches everything, as more of a rubber band that can even kind of be linear, but like a sphere, something that it goes everywhere. It is everywhere.
Yeah, well, you're right. Maybe how about a big giant sponge, right? So a big blob of sponge that you can pull and push and squeeze, and there's little holes in it. And so recognizing that space and time are tied together and they can be stretched and compressed. We live on Earth, where our space-time is relative to the perturbation or the disruption that Earth has on the space-time around it. So if we were, for example, living on the moon, or living on, let's say, Jupiter, where the gravity is much greater, or the moon where it's much, much less than Earth, we would experience time slightly different. Time and it would go by a little bit differently. And the more massive of an object you're around, the more that is distorted, till eventually you come to something like a black hole, where it kind of just breaks down altogether and space-time doesn't even make sense anymore. So if you think of time, and I were to ask you, Luis, and I'm going to do this exercise with you again, because maybe some of your audience hasn't heard this before. If I ask you, Luis, what is in the most simplest terms possible, one sentence or less, fewest words possible, what's your definition of the past?
That's a
Don't overthink
question.
it. Don't overthink it.
So it's something that's already happened.
Something that's already happened. Yeah.
Perfect. Michael, something that already happened. So I'm going to give you another chance here, Luis. With what Michael just said, if the definition of the past is an event that already occurred, what is the future?
Something that hasn't.
Great, right? Something that hasn't happened yet. What that means is that the present, where we live and everything that we experience, is not actually a moment of space-time. It's actually, if you were to look at, let's say, a fuse of a time bomb, right? Where the ashes that have burned are the past. That's real and it's there. That part of the fuse that has remained unlit, it's an infinitely long fuse, that remains unlit. It hasn't ignited yet. That's the future. Right. The present is that infinitesimally small moment of space-time, probably measured in Planck time, where you have a transition between the future becoming the past. It's an illusion. It's not really a moment. It's a infinitely small moment that's moving forward. It's never static. And so by that definition, it's the present is really nothing more. Everything that we think and we love and we hate and we fear and all the memories that we have are gained from that very, 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 very tiny moment of space-time.
Yeah.
Why is that important? Well, because we know space-time can be flexible. And if you were to, let's take our analogy again of the fuse, right? Or a cigarette or a cigar burning, and you were to remove the glare and take, let's say, a microscope and really zoom in, you would notice something very interesting about the moment of ignition.
Right.
You would notice that the fuse, or that the cigarette, or that the cigar where the cherry is, that moment of ignition, burns unevenly. Right. In fact, there are portions at the very, very small, we're talking quantum world now, where moments of the past are actually now in front of the future and back and forth. It's an uneven burn until eventually you have everything is burnt and now you have the past.
Yeah.
So theorists right now, especially in the quantum world, have established a theory that says some of the observations we have with the electron, when we went to high school, we always learned that the electron orbited the nucleus of an atom. We now realize that's absolutely not correct. What we've learned now is it's called an electron cloud. And what's happening is that the electron is literally ebbing in and out of existence trillions of times per second all around, and you can never predict where it's going to go. And what scientists now believe is that the fabric of space-time at that level, when you're that small, is porous. There's holes, and you can actually zip in and out of the fabric of space-time, and now you're here, now you're not. Now you're here, now you're not. And this is important because when you think about space-time, we experience time pretty much in a linear fashion, but we experience space in a three-dimensional fashion. What if there is other things? We know that in the quantum world is possible. What if there are other things, other realities that time itself can be also experienced in a three-dimensional sense?
Yeah.
Meaning, we are having this conversation right now with your lovely audience, right here, right now.
Right.
But if I had the ability where my space time was a little bit more flexible, if I was sitting right here 5 minutes from now, or right here 5 minutes ago, we would never be able to have this conversation. It'd be like two ships passing in the night.
Correct.
And so that is one of the theories that was presented at some time in long time ago in ATIP. Okay. And furthermore, it also might explain some of the other phenomenon, such as what we call remote viewing, or maybe psychic abilities, or precognition, human precognition. Because the human brain is a lot of scientists now that are neuroscientists believe the brain is really a part of quantum entanglement, and that there are quantum processes occurring in the human consciousness, and if that is indeed the case, then we may be able to up here, not necessarily here, but in our brains, be able to experience time in a slightly different way. We do know that when we have traumatic incidents that happen to us, a lot of people report everything going in slow motion.
Right.
And that may very well be experiencing the quantum state of human consciousness.
Yeah. Well, okay. So thank you for that explanation. It's beautiful. And I got excited as you were saying about it, because that's exactly what I wanted to hear. And that's how I remembered it. The fuse, okay, or let's say the cigarette. Does this phenomena, in your opinion, live within this cigarette?
Well, most of the universe does, and that's my point.
Right.
We have 5 fundamental senses that we view the universe. Right. We see it, we hear it, we taste it, we touch it, we smell it, and that's it. But there is an entire reality around each and every one of us right now. You've got Wi-Fi signals coursing through your body. You've got radar returns coming in from the airport. You've got GPS signals coming down from satellites. You've got FM, AM coursing through your body. You've got cosmic rays coming in from outer space, neutrinos coming in from the sun. All this is occurring right around you right now, and you can't experience it because you don't have the equipment to. So take a nice, bright, starry night. Take a look at the beautiful heavens. You say, wow, honey, look at these beautiful stars. Now, if you were to look through that same exact night sky using a radio telescope, where you can see infrared and ultraviolet and all these other things, all of a sudden the whole universe lights up in front of you and looks completely different. Yeah. Now, it's not different. You just can't perceive all of that because we're human beings. Furthermore, when you look at that, and we realize that most of the world lies beyond our perception and comprehension, there's also a scalability issue. So I am a human being, and when I judge the universe relative to me, I know I can go in that direction 13.5 billion light years, and I can go that direction 13.5 billion light years, and that is the extent of the known universe. The visible known universe is approximately 27 billion light years across, and we are right in the middle, right? Now, with that said, from a scale perspective, the atom is 1 × 10 to the minus 26 in size. So there is equally per scale just as large a space inside every single one of us as there is outside. And so, but we can't perceive it. The only thing we can perceive is something maybe 50 feet or 100 feet in front of our face. So by definition, 99.99999% of the universe, we will never be able to interact with, and we will never be able to see or to sense, because it's just where we are stuck in the universe.
Yeah, no, well, I sorry, Michael, because here's why I asked the question is, so if we've established that this cigarette is everything and anything that has ever happened in the entire history of all of it, including this phenomena and things that we've seen and slippage of time, all of it. My question is who's smoking the cigarette? Who lit the cigarette? If that makes sense.
That's a great question.
Who lit the fuse?
For philosophy and theologians. This is the age-old question that mankind has been trying to ask itself. This is why we have things like religions, and we have origin stories. We want to know. It's kind of in our DNA to try to figure that out and ask those hard questions. Religion's been asking that question trying to answer that question since we came out of caves.
Right.
Based on, can I ask you a quick question? So this is fascinating to me, and we talk about, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, type 5 civilizations. But are you familiar with type minus civilizations? This concept of the ability of human beings to, instead of expanding out into the stars, expanding inward and mastering the atomic level. And so it's basically the idea that we can begin to manipulate and rearrange our very own composition on the quantum level that changes our abilities in reality. And based on what you're saying, I'm curious, when we talk about saucers and tic tacs and triangles, do you think it's possible not only that these are, potentially extraterrestrial beings that have mastered type 5 civilization, but they've mastered it inward, where they can actually manipulate and manage at the quantum level?
Yeah, well, look, we're doing cellular engineering now, aren't we? Right. So 100 years ago, we were doing prosthetics. We started mastering prosthetics and surgery and whatnot. 70 years ago, we started mastering transplants of organs. 20 years ago, we started mastering cellular engineering. 10 years ago, we really started mastering human genome engineering. I mean, it's a matter of time. Sure, we're close to doing it now. Now, if you mean with your conscious brain trying to rearrange things, that may happen at some point in the future. Maybe we evolve as a species to do that. But whether we do it with our conscious brain or we do it with some sort of technical interface, I think it's inevitable. That's exactly where we're going. We're going to the point where we are already engineering material now at the atomic level. We're getting into nano level engineering. Nano, by definition, 1/1000th, of the size of a meter. So we're getting to that stage now.
But do you see any of these sightings, the things that we're seeing, the UFO phenomenon? Do you think it can be associated with beings that either are technologically able to, or on a conscious level able to manipulate reality itself from a quantum level?
Well, I think right now anything is
in your
on the
opinion.
table. Look, we're kind of a basic species. I can go right now to DARPA and I can find a room where there is a pilot sitting in a dark room with a helmet on his head, and through thought process, he's flying an aircraft halfway around the world. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that telepathy? Well, no, but it is a technical interface that is reading the human brain waves and interpreting that into an action. And we're doing that now. So I don't think it's much of a leap if we're already doing something like that now, that in 100 or 1,000 years, we're probably going to get a lot better at doing that. And I think it's certainly possible. I think, the one thing we learn about the future is that, every time we try to put a limit on it, we wind up being catastrophically wrong. Back in the late 1800s, one of the famous quote by one of the directors of the patent office, he said, in a couple of years here, we won't even need a U.S. patent office anymore, because all the inventions of mankind that could ever be invented will have been invented.
Right.
If you can imagine that.
Yeah,
so,
well, that was way off. That was way off, clearly. So real quick, let's just reset the room. I want to let everybody know in the chat, we see your super chats. We're not ignoring them. We're writing them. Rather's got them saved. So at the end of the show, when we got that time to open those questions up for Lou, we will definitely be asking those questions, and they'll be at the top of the list. And then whatever questions else, because the chat's going like crazy, we'll get them in there. And also, just a quick reminder, if you're enjoying the show, like, share, subscribe, tell everybody what's going on right now, because we're having a fascinating conversation with Mr. Lou Elizondo, former ATIP director. So let's continue. Michael, where do you want to go next with Mr. Elizondo?
Well, yeah, I'm curious. So, again, getting back to this conversation about UFO phenomenon, things that have been observed. Obviously, you came up with in ATIP the 5 observables. Do you think that anything that was released this week from Jeremy Corbell, any of the radar information that we saw, do you think anything in those drops exhibited any of the 5 observables?
Well, let's rehash those 5 observables real quick, right? We're talking instantaneous acceleration, hypersonic velocities, low observability, transmedium travel, and anti-gravity, if you want to call it that, or positive lift, or whatever you want to call it. We have objects on a scope. Some of those objects were later filmed going into the water, right, and going in, and in some cases even coming out. So that's one, transmedium travel. Positive lift or anti-gravity. Well, there were no associated wings, no control surfaces, so there might be another observable there, right? And then of course there's the eyewitness reports and additional radar. Look, let's not forget you're looking at one radar scope. There were other radars, okay? So don't fool yourself. There were a lot of eyes looking at those things, and it'd be interesting to see what that data suggests. I'm very careful to take a single video or one anecdote, because a lot of times you're only looking at something that occurred in a very brief moment of time and space. You don't know what happened leading up to that. And you don't know what happened afterwards, and you don't know the other circumstances involved, right? Were there other cameras? Were there other, radar sensors? Were there other eyewitnesses? So all that information needs to be forthcoming. This is precisely why it's important for Congress to give more time than 180 days to do the report, because you don't want to rush this. I know it's tempting. People say, I want the answers. We've been waiting 70 years. Well, if that's the case, what's another 180 days going to mean, right? I mean, let's do it right. Let's get all the information. I can tell you, I've got calls from DC from friends of mine, and they're like, look, dude, they didn't even come talk to me. Right. I've got data sitting in a database right now, and I wasn't even asked.
And when you say you mean the UAPTF and the Pentagon, the DoD.
Yeah, the Pentagon. There are people that aren't even being asked for data, and how can you write a report and give it to Congress when you haven't even asked everybody all the questions yet?
Is this being taken seriously by the Biden administration?
I'm certainly not going to speak for our president. I respect the position too much. That doesn't matter who's in charge. Our president is very, very busy. He's got a lot of things on his plate right now. I would definitely not want to be a president during these times, between a global pandemic and all sorts of issues that he's dealing with on a daily basis, from transnational terrorism, nuclear proliferation, economic issues, social issues. I mean, he's got his hands full. Are they aware of this? They are absolutely aware of it. Are they taking it seriously? His last, and this is not intended to disrespect anybody. I'm apolitical, but when an elected official kind of laughs something off, forget about the origin, forget about the word UAP. You have something, and it has been confirmed by our Department of Defense that something is incurring upon our controlled U.S. airspace, and there's nothing we can do about it. I don't think that's a laughing matter. I think if these things were to be doing this over the White House, I don't think anybody would be laughing right now. Mm-hmm. In fact, we'd probably be trying to shoot him out of the sky. So I don't know why people laugh. That's not really for me an appropriate reaction, especially when our brave men and women in uniform are reporting these things. And by the way, they're not that far from DC.
Yeah.
I
mean, no, I don't think it's good either. But I think they're starting to stop laughing because, for example, we shared on the show the other day, Newt Gingrich on his website, released a discussion he was having in front of people about this topic, and he would say, and again, whatever side you lean on, Newt Gingrich is a masterful politician, but he's also a really great thinker. And this is not a topic that Newt Gingrich has ever talked about, ever. He was a former Speaker of the House. That's a big deal. And he didn't laugh once, not once. Right.
Well, and neither did Harry Reid. He was the Senate Majority Leader. I mean, this is a serious issue. This is not a political issue. This is a humanity issue.
Right.
And we need to look at it that way.
Well, that's why we did the big phone home. It's time to start having this conversation and asking our senators and elected, representatives, hey, we want more transparency. We want more science. We want a more open discussion. Right. We want some grants given to some universities so they can start studying this stuff.
Absolutely. Oh, by the way, if I may, Luis.
Yeah, please.
There's only part of this conversation that belongs under the realm of the U.S. government.
Right.
Let me state from my perspective. I only want the government to look at this from a national security perspective. Mm-hmm. I do not want the government involved in this conversation in anything other than what its job is, and that is to protect our borders and our national sovereignty. Anything else, I want other people involved. I want academics, I want scientists, philosophers, theologians, teachers. I want everybody to have this conversation. I do not want the government thinking on my behalf of what I should or should not think about this. It's none of their damn business. They have a very narrow lane on this topic that they should be sticking to. Anything beyond that is not their business. And frankly, I don't want them involved in it. So,
right. That's based on you saying that, yeah, I'm curious. So that being said, what's your interest in running for Congress? You've mentioned it a couple of times, and at first I thought it was a bit in jest, and then I've heard it again. And I was like, oh, he might be serious.
Yeah, he's a little fiery about it.
Yeah. Look,
Yeah, I don't want to run for Congress, but I will if I have to. Look, it's like going back inside and being a government official. I don't want to do that. Look, I just want to retire. I want to
right.
Have a beer and like I said, if I walk down the streets and nobody knows who the hell I am, that's exactly where I want to be. But the problem is, I took an oath a long time ago to defend this country, like as I've said before, from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And when that enemy winds up being bureaucracy, or people inside the Pentagon that have now confused their responsibility for privilege, I've got a problem with that.
Yeah.
And if it requires me having to, put my damn boots back on again and get into the fray and start knocking heads, I will do that. I don't want to. There's people that are far more qualified to me than
not
me
only
to
that,
run for
but
office.
I don't think you're allowed to knock heads in Congress, Lou.
I mean that
I think they frown upon that. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that is a for anybody out there, that is a figure of speech.
I thought that was funny.
Metaphorically, proverbially.
So here's the thing. We had this discussion on the show the other day, and we talked about, do we want Lou Elizondo? And this might be an unpopular opinion in the chat, but we were thinking about it. Like, if Lou Elizondo ran for Congress, first of all, and I know you won't answer this question, but we were like, what party would he run under? Whose seat would he take? What state would he run in? There's a lot of interesting questions. I don't know if you'd want to answer any of those. If you don't,
just hypothetically, Lou. Just hypothetically.
I'll share with you right now. Like I said, I've been apolitical for a very long time. Here's my personal philosophy. I tend to be socially liberal and fiscally conservative. Meaning, let me explain. You do you. I went to war, so you have the right to do what you want, practice what you want, believe what you want. And I will defend your right to do it, even if it means you don't like me and you spit in my face for it. You know what? I will defend your right to do that, because I believe that everybody has a right to pursue their own happiness, up to the point you don't interfere with somebody else's right to pursue happiness. Okay, so as long as you do what you want to do, you want to believe and behave the way you want to behave, as long as you don't interfere or take away the rights of somebody else, I will support you to the end of the earth doing that, even if it conflicts with me. But at the same point, don't tell me what I have to do as well. Okay. And so as far as my fiscal conservative, look, I believe government should be held to the same level of responsibility as each and every one of you. You all pay taxes, and you all have to be responsible for your own financial health. If you overspend, that's on you, baby. You can't come back as a government and say, oh, we overspent, let's go back into the kitty, take more. No. And what I've said before to people, look, if I ever got into a position where I was, let's say, back in the Department of Defense, first of all, for the record, you don't want a guy like me coming back, because I will be draconian. I will do things that you will hear this screaming from here in Wyoming, back in DC, because
those screams will not be coming from heads being cracked. That has been established.
No. It's gonna come from draconian policies, all this
I got it.
crap, the millions we spend on just chauffeurs alone for our senior executives so they can grab a meeting. No more. You take your Prius, baby. Or you know what? If you want, there's a Humvee sitting right out there you can grab and it'll take you. Here's your Kevlar, right? And all this VIP parking and designated crap. I know it sounds silly, but that's the mentality. We have come to a point where rather than focus on those people actually doing the work in government, we tend to align our allegiances to our boss above us, right? Yeah. And that's the exact opposite way of real leadership. Real leadership is your loyalty is to everybody below you. That's your job is to work hard for them. Well, the more senior you are, in my opinion, the further back you should be parking. You should let the worker bees that are coming in at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning that are doing the work for you. Those are the ones that should be parking up front, not you. And anyways, those are, that's kind of my philosophy.
No, man, God, I would want to have you back to actually have maybe, because I do want to dive into your political sort of philosophies. Because it's funny you say it almost sounds like a libertarian, but with some social, social. It sounds libertarianish. Don't mess with me. I won't mess with you. Make sure you pay your bills, and let's get the show on the road. Like we got work to do. And it sounds like a lot of people have gotten comfortable.
If someone really needs help, we give that help, right?
Of course.
I'm not saying just feed people to the lions. There are categories of people who are truly underserved.
Social safety nets.
We need to create social safety nets, and we also need to have a way to encourage people to realize their full potential. And look, Luis, like your dad, my dad was a political prisoner in Cuba. I grew up with stories. We're in exile. I cannot go to Cuba. I can't go because I'll be put in front of a firing squad. Right. So, for me, individual freedoms and liberty is critical. Even if those opinions differ against mine, it's okay. Yeah. I don't mind that.
I call myself a lefty libertarian, so that's kind of jives me as well.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like because we both are Cuban, I'm not going to give it a label. I'm just going to say very middle of the road sort of feel for things. Give me the information, then let me make a decision based off of the information you give me. But
I don't need to identify with a flag or a party. Okay, I identify with the issues, and this is part of the issue we have today because you are being forced to identify either as a conservative or as a liberal. But you know what? 90% of the people have kind of a piece of both.
Yes,
right. But we're being forced to no, you have to choose a side. Right. You either have chocolate or vanilla ice cream. There is no strawberry. There is no, pecan myrtle. Yeah, no, you can't mix both, which is that's
ridiculous.
Realistic.
It's ridiculous. No, it's a ridiculous notion. And honestly, I was going to say greedily, I never want you running for Congress. Only because if you ran for Congress, you'd have less time to have conversations with us. You'd have less time to talk about the UAP topic because now as a congressman, you have to serve a constituency. You got to make sure that your constituency is happy, and you're not going to have the opportunity to talk about this topic at the level that you do.
Well, maybe you do. Maybe what you do if you are a really effective leader, you set aside one day every 2 weeks where you spend 2 hours doing a podcast just like this, communicating with not just your voters, but people who are interested in the causes that you're involved with, right? So you come on and say, look, this is, 2 weeks from now, we're going to have another one of these. And I'm going to tell you exactly what we're doing for disclosure, exactly what we're doing for transparency, and by the way, also where I'm falling short and where I need your help. Right. So
Lou,
that's amazing.
Lou Elizondo, I would like to put in my resume for your media operations director for that show.
You got a deal.
That sounds like a job. And I tell you, you convinced me, man. Run. If you promise us that, if that's part of your platform as you run, oh man, I will go to the hill for you, sir. Okay? Honestly, that's exactly what we need. And I mean, I couldn't imagine, say, you and a Marco Rubio having these discussions once a week, 2 hours a day. And who else knows who might join? So, man, that's exciting stuff. I love it.
So speaking of the Hill, I've got a question. Max Moskovich had Harry Reid on his program the other day, and Harry Reid said something that I found to be really interesting. He said, "Of all the information I have," and I quote, "of all the information I have, which is quite a bit, I think there's no indication whatsoever that they're harmful, being whatever is operating the UFOs that have the 5 observables. Kind of scary." Then he goes on to say, "Kind of scary, to be honest with you, but there's no indication of there being a reason to be afraid of them. But I think they're big time scary." What do you make of that statement from Harry Reid?
Well, first of all, Harry Reid is absolutely an American hero. And I say that because I've had the honor and privilege to work on his program and project for quite some time. Let me just say that. Secondly, I can't answer for the good senator, but let me tell you what I think people get confused with. And not, by the way, not Harry Reid. I'm just saying in general, people. Okay? We talk about the potential threat, right? But people automatically assume when you say there's a potential threat, they think, oh, you're going down the fear-mongering avenue, and you're talking about hostile intent. We're not. There is a distinct difference between a potential threat and something being hostile. Let me give you an example. If one of these UAP flies next to a 737 full of 250 passengers while, kicking back on their way to Los Angeles, and it gets too close, and now the pilot has to take evasive maneuvers, is that a threat? Well, yes, of course it's a threat. It's an air safety threat, right? It's an issue. Is it necessarily hostile? No. It doesn't mean it's necessarily being hostile. If I go to an airport, and I've said this analogy over and over again, if I get on an airplane, that's not the jet engine isn't a threat to me. But if I jump out of the airplane and I walk around to the back of the engine when it's firing up, is that a threat to me? Well, yeah, it's a threat to my health and safety. Chances are I'm going to get burned. I'm probably going to lose my hearing. There's going to be some consequences of that. It's not necessarily the intention of the jet engine to hurt me. It's just that it's the nature of the technology. So I want to make sure that people understand that when certainly when I'm talking about a potential threat, it doesn't necessarily mean hostile intent. We haven't seen any overt hostile intent yet. Okay.
Well, the Italians might say different.
Well, the Italians absolutely will say something different.
I feel like a lot of people kind of miss that one in season 1.
And not just Italy, but some folks in Brazil would say the same thing.
Yeah.
So there's a few countries that have said, whoa, not so fast. We've had different experiences. But that aside, I think we need to approach this cautiously and deliberately. I don't think there's any cause for panic. I'm certainly not going to sit there and raise my hands and say, oh, welcome, brother. I'm just not that guy. It's like if I have a new neighbor that moves into the neighborhood, I might offer the guy or gal a beer, but I'm not going to necessarily, invite him to come over to babysit my kids. There's an assessment period that has to happen. Right.
Yeah.
Right. One of the things we talk about here often is that, 99%, and this is just a hypothetical here, but 99% of the things people see in the sky are probably explainable. There's these diamonds in the rough, this UAP phenomenon that may, have one of the 5 observables, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. Of that hypothetical 1%, in your personal opinion, what percentage of those do you think have non-human or off-world potential properties?
Potentially all of them. Potentially none of them. This is why we need more data. When you ask a question like that, potential, what is the potential? Well, 100%. Also 0%. We don't know. And this is exactly why we need to look into this, because it's your guess is as good as mine.
Is it though? Is my guess as good as yours, Lou?
It is. We're all observing the same thing. I might have more data and information, but I haven't been able to say conclusively one way or the other. Otherwise, I would have. And I want to be very, very careful with that. This is the problem with the UFO community that we have today, because everybody is sure of something and they can't all be right. And they all say, no, shh, just hush. Trust me. Trust me, those guys, they don't know what they're talking about. Just here, look at me here, listen to me. Don't pay attention to them. You know, they don't know what they're talking about. I have all the answers. By the way, give me some money. You know, that's the crap we're dealing with.
I know. I hate it.
You know, I want to blow that out of the water. I want to blow it to smithereens, get rid of all the charlatans and hucksters and snake oil salesmen, and hopefully what comes back is a very much focused scientific and philosophical approach with the academic rigor you would expect out of Stanford or Harvard or Oxford. That's what I want. I want the very best and brightest looking at this topic, and not superimposing their own narratives or belief systems or whatnot.
With absolute authority and conviction. It's very frustrating.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. So Lou, we've only got about 11 or 12 minutes with you. Can I ask you for a favor? Can I get 10 more minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to do that live and put you on the spot, but
if you said no, that would have been fantastic.
No, it would have been fantastic, and we would have been like, all right. So there's a couple of things. First of all, I don't necessarily want you to comment. Again, I'll start with, Alex Dietrich. Thank you, American hero.
Absolutely.
So I want to thank
one of America's finest.
Yep. I want to thank Ryan Graves. And I want to thank Senator Marco Rubio, because the layers that you have added to this David Fravor encounter is the best 7-layer dip I've ever had in my life. It really adds a lot of context and nuance to what happened that day. And I know we still don't have radar tracking. I know we still don't have the longer version of the video, but damn, if all of those people are lying or mistaken, it's just that to me is an even greater impossibility than this phenomena existing. So with that said, I don't want to spend too much time, but I wanted to thank them. And if Alex Dietrich is watching, we'd love to have you on the show, because I think she is
Alex, Jim Slate, Dave Fravor are American heroes. And by the way, there's a lot more that haven't come out yet that were in the E2 Hawkeye and that were on the bridge of the Princeton, the guys like Sean Cahill. There's
we
Ryan
also got
Graves.
two more pilots that were in those cockpits that we haven't heard from yet. So there's more layers coming. So
there is.
So I'm excited for that. But what I want to transition to, because I know this is important to you, and there's still some questions that I have. The first is your erasing of your emails. Can you clarify what the hell is going on with that?
Sure. So,
and is this part of why Sheehan is sort of joining your team?
So 2 questions.
Yes.
The first one is the deletion of my emails. First of all, people say, oh, that's normal and routine. Bullshit. Mm-hmm. No, it's not. Okay. When you are an intelligence officer, there are specific guidelines for the destruction of emails. Okay. When I was working ATIP and also when I was working Guantanamo Bay, those are records that are supposed to be kept permanently and then given over to the National Archives after 25 years. Fact. Okay. Now, why is that? Because when you are involved in some sort of intelligence effort, especially as it relates to a trial like the military commissions, the 9/11 trial, right? 9/11, the guys who are responsible for the terrorist attacks that are sitting at Guantanamo Bay, all that correspondence is considered discoverable. It's considered evidence in a court of law.
Right.
It is illegal to destroy, in fact, those types of records. It's against the law. So this is not just violating policy. This is actually borderline now illegal act, right? Mm-hmm. And when the Pentagon comes out and says, yeah, Lou had no assigned duties, he had nothing to do with ATIP, they say, okay, prove it. Oh, well, yeah, we don't have any emails. Well, wait a minute. So you're saying on one hand, he had no assigned duties and wasn't involved in ATIP, and then you turn around and you're telling the world that, oh, we really don't know. We don't. You destroyed the guy's emails when, by the way, by law you were supposed to keep them. Interesting.
It's criminal.
So what else did you do? Well, it's deceitful, is what it is, right?
Yeah.
And it's disingenuous. Now, between us, I don't think my emails have gone anywhere. I don't think they're deleted. The good news is that some of those emails still exist.
Yeah.
And those emails are probably part, if I was a guessing man, without going into too much detail, part of an official complaint.
Yeah.
That,
maybe went to the IG. Maybe.
You know?
You never know.
Wouldn't that be something? Well, you asked about Daniel Sheehan, right? That was your second question?
Yes.
Okay, so let me make sure I answer that because I don't want somebody getting mad saying, oh, you didn't answer the Daniel. So
yeah, no, I'm sorry. No, I had stepped over you, so that would have been my fault.
So let me say a few words here before I talk about Daniel Sheehan, okay? Watergate, okay? Silkwood, Pentagon Papers, Oliver North, okay? Landmark cases that affected this country. The one common denominator, Daniel Sheehan. Daniel Sheehan is probably one of the world's greatest constitutional attorneys that we've had this entire century. Okay, Harvard trained and absolute expert on constitutional law. And at the end of the day, this is what we're talking about. So, in order for me to go toe to toe against the Pentagon, I knew I need the very best. Okay, now Daniel Sheehan is entitled. He's an individual, just like I am. He's entitled to his own position, his own personal opinions. Yeah. And remember at the beginning of this conversation, what I said, right? I will defend your right to do that, even if I don't agree with it. Okay.
Right.
So I did not hire Daniel Sheehan because I agreed with his personal views. I hired Daniel Sheehan because he's one of the greatest constitutional attorneys this country has ever seen. And he's got a great track record. So, if you're going to go against an 800-pound gorilla, you better come prepared.
Yeah.
And so Daniel Sheehan is.
Sorry. I'm looking at the time, and I just want to get these questions in. I'm going to push back a little bit on this, just a little bit. And it's an optics thing for me. On one hand, you've got Stephen Greer yelling at the top of his lungs that you're a disinformation agent. Daniel Sheehan worked for him, and now no longer works for him. He works for you. And I can understand. He's an attorney. He could work for whoever the hell hires him. Totally understandable. But it's his personal beliefs conflict really hard with yours. And so I'm afraid from an optics standpoint, it seems to muddy the waters a little bit. It's almost like we're getting two messages out of one effort, if that makes sense. And if there's anything that you could say that maybe
your wife said so.
Sorry, I'm getting a. My wife.
You got it.
Literally looking at me.
Well, we're still 5 minutes early. We still got 5 minutes in the official show.
I'm good.
Yes.
Okay,
she's good.
She's saying you've got me for even a little bit more time.
Oh God, Jesus, thank you.
Okay, Jesus, they're saying thank you. Okay.
I thought I had upset the lady Elizondo.
No, she actually just said that you owe her, but she's given me more time.
Oh my God, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.
No worries.
So going back to that, you know what I mean? Like, I just, if there's anything that you could sort of set my mind at ease, this is like a question I had,
look,
you know?
Sure. Look, as far as muddying the waters, I think Mr. Sheehan, like everybody else, is entitled to their opinion. Okay.
Yeah.
For him, representing another individual is not a conflict of interest in my mind.
Right.
There are attorneys that will go out and they will represent the mob and then turn around and represent somebody else, because that's what a good defense attorney does, right? You're supposed to take your own personal conviction out of something and now represent the client as fair and objective as possible. Now, at the end of the day, you are navigating the legal system and you are making sure that your client is receiving the benefit of the law, right? And is protected by the law. And that's why I have Mr. Sheehan working with me. As far as his relationships with other clients, that's his business. And whether I happen to agree or disagree with those clients, it's really not my business.
Right.
And just like after this talk, if I go out, I go have a beer with a neighbor, that's not really your business, nor is it my business who you see after this, right?
Right. I get that aspect of it for sure. You know, I totally understand that, and you're 100% right. Like, that's not the issue. It's just, like, again, it's just an optics thing for me. Like, it's just, I just don't want to. I don't want people who are coming in that are new to this getting too like, I don't know. If I was like, I'm sorry if it's a sensitive question.
No, Luis. Listen, it's a fair question, but we have to remember we have to take emotion out of this.
Right.
This is not an emotional decision. This is a logical and fact-based decision, right?
Right.
And this is important when you're going up against a formidable enemy, you better have the right people on your team. You know, when I was in working with the special operations community, there are a lot of guys there that, you know, I wouldn't be caught dead with on a Friday night going out somewhere, you know, because there's nothing good going to happen as a result. But more, you put those guys behind a trigger, man, and all of a sudden they're the best point guy you have ever seen. You want that guy right next to you.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. And look, this is nothing personal against Sheehan. I honestly, I've listened. I love listening to him speak. I respect his history, especially with moving America forward, you know, and forward thinking, especially a lot, and has been part of uncovering some really dark secrets in American history. So from that aspect, like, you know, he's got my full respect, and I'd love to maybe one day talk to him because I agree, not with everything he says, but some of those things I'm like, oh, that's pretty interesting. So you've explained your position on that, and so I guess, you know, we can move on. There was Michael. Did you have a question? Because I've been hogging this interview. I'm sorry.
No, it's totally fine, and we got to get to the super chats as well. But I just wanted to say, like, I get that. I get the idea that you want to have the absolute best person on the job for the job that they're doing. And when we're talking about disclosure, when we're talking about this thing that is so important, and it is one of the things that is hidden beneath the surface, and it's compartmentalized within the government, we got to do everything in our damn power to shake the tree. And so if Danny Sheehan's the right guy to do that, he's the right guy to do that.
Well, and remember, again, let's go back to the beginning of this conversation when I said we have to respect everybody's opinion.
Right.
How hypocritical of it would be of me for me to say that and turn around and hire an attorney that only believes exactly the way I believe. That's
right.
That's
well, you know, I guess in my brain I went, well, gosh, aren't there any other, you know, really great savvy political attorneys that, you know, maybe some young guns, some new blood, someone that's really smart and doesn't have a bias. He's there for the truth.
Hey, we got room. Come on.
Yeah, okay, awesome. Great. Any attorneys out there, hit up Mr. Elizondo.
If you know any attorneys that want to come and be part of this, you know what? We've got a lot of room for everybody. Come on. Would love to have you on board.
So this is not just you're open. Okay, great. Like, see, like, that's what I want to hear. Like, I just want to hear something that's like, okay, yeah, these open to getting a whole legal team. Like, and this is not just a disclosure thing. This is a fighting for you, Lou Elizondo, you know, against this element that's erasing emails, that's, you know, holding up information in places. Like, you know, we had Kevin Childress on the show, and, you know, he worked at the IG, you know, like he really laid out for us sort of how these things work. So bravo to you. You know, like, I love that you've become really fiery in the last, I'd say, month and a half. Like, you're not taking any more shit, and I like it.
Well, Luis, let me say this too. I want to make sure people are clear. I'm not doing this IG investigation necessarily for me. I'm doing it for all of us. Okay?
Right.
This is a way to ensure transparency and hold our government accountable to the ideals that they have sworn to uphold. Right. And so anybody who is going to take advantage of that, and instead they confuse their responsibility for privilege and begin starting to make unilateral decisions for which they're not authorized to make, and do things like this, we've got a serious problem on our hands. Those elements must be rooted out. They must, because they what they do is they threaten democracy, is what they do. They threaten the very ethos of what we all agree America should be. That is decidedly un-American when you start abusing your power and trying to hide the truth from the Americans. Hey, man, you know, you work for us. You know, let's not forget, your job in the government is to serve the people, not the other way around. And if you have forgotten that, then maybe it's time to find a new job.
Yeah.
Quick question, real quick. I'm just curious if you're aware, Lou, of any, and I know I'm switching back here to the UAP phenomenon topic real quick, but I think it's important. Are you aware of any other videos or anything else that the public should be aware of or expect to see when it comes to the 5 observables? Any other video evidence or anything that we should know about?
Or maybe that's already unclassified, kind of like some of these videos were. Some of these were already floating around online before they popped up, you know, in the New York Times.
Yeah. You know, there's a lot of other videos and photographs, as I've always said. unfortunately, a lot of these reside on classified systems, and because of that, I can't violate my security oath. But I have gone as far as I can to the ledge and told people from day one that there is more video, there's better video, there's longer video, there's videos that are much more newer and much more recent. I think at the time people thought I was speaking in hyperbole. I wasn't. I was being very specific. I knew exactly what was out there. I know exactly what I've seen. And hopefully by now people know every time I have one of these conversations, I always leave some breadcrumbs for people to follow. I'm not trying to play a game here, and where in the world is Waldo? Right. I'm trying to have a conversation without going to jail.
And speaking of where's Waldo, the black triangle, that image has been, the idea of that image has been floating around on Twitter forever, and people want to know if it's real, if that photo exists, Lou.
Let's just say that there exists some very, very, very compelling documentation and other media that exists. I have to be very careful confirming or denying something specifically if the government has decided not to address it. I have to respect that. But what I can say is that there is some very, very compelling information that has not seen the light of day yet.
Thank you.
And I wanted to ask this one. This is one of our, I think, last two questions from us, and then we're going to open it up to the super chats. Thank you guys for being so patient, and thank you, Lou, for sticking around for a couple more minutes.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, Lou. Thank you so much, man.
Sure.
So
I don't think I had a choice. My wife came in here, and so. Well, don't thank me. You need to thank my wife.
Yeah, well, I always love talking to your wife. And by the way, this is the show for some reason where wives yell in on the live stream. Like Jazz Shaw gets yelled at by his wife when he's on the show.
Dude, let me just tell you, people think that we're because we're Latin and we're Cuban, we're kind of fiery and stuff. Dude, you have no idea.
No.
I'm married to an Eastern European dude, and. Dude, hell hath no fury.
Yeah.
Believe me.
Yeah. No, I can tell you right now, if I revealed some of the most intimate moments of me being a puppy, you all would be. It would be God. Twitter, Twitter would be real gross.
Al Qaeda and ISIS ain't got nothing.
Nothing.
On what?
Yeah.
Boy,
yeah. Anyway, we love the ladies. Thank you.
I'm just kidding.
Thank you, Miss Elizondo.
Thank you, Miss Elizondo.
Thank you, Mrs. Mataluni, and soon to be one day, Mrs. Jimenez. We'll see. I love you, babe. Okay, so this is a question really to quell conspiracy. Okay, it's a question that I've gotten a couple of times, and I wanted to just get your reaction to it. And I've never heard the question asked. I'm sure it has been because you've done a million interviews, and we thank you for all your time. I can't even imagine how many hours you put into doing this kind of stuff.
For nothing.
Not for nothing, but for
no pay. I mean,
no compensation. So the question is, are you a civilian?
I am a civilian.
Okay.
There's a difference between a government employee and a government contractor. We're all civilians. Government employees too are civilians, unless you're wearing a uniform. I am absolutely a civilian. I think you're asking me, I am employed by the United States government, and ask that question very carefully, and maybe I can give you a good answer. Are you asking me, am I a government employee, or am I working as a contractor in that capacity?
Well, it's a clearance question. The question was, if he's a civilian, why does he have a TSSCI clearance?
Because I am currently a government contractor, and that's all I'm prepared to say right now. Boom. But I am a government contractor.
And that makes sense, and that's the reason why you have it. And that's exactly what I wanted you to say. I wanted to quell people's conspiratorial thinking, because sometimes things go crazy. So, again, like I'm just trying to quell that. yeah, that was it. That was like.
Should we get into the super
let's
chats?
Do it. Let's do it in the super chat. Rather get in here.
I got beer to drink. We all got
people
beer to
got
drink.
beer to drink. We got 10 minutes left with Mr. Elizondo. So, Mr. Squidding, what's
Rather, there you are.
There he is. Look at that smile, man. I just want to kiss this man. Anyway,
the super chat, the chat is lighting up. They all love this discussion. We got a lot of people who have asked some really great questions. Jean-Francois Charlie Baugh, sorry if I'm sure I'm mispronouncing your name, but he says, Mr. E, first, you are a true model of integrity. I agree. You said that governments may be aware of UAP since the 30s from an event in Italy. Has no group of scientists ever tried in nearly a century to establish communication with an intelligence behind the tech?
Boy, that is a great
super chat.
I'm trying to think about You know who'd be better to we should have Hal Puthoff on this.
Yes, please.
And that would be the guy, him and Kit Green and a few others and Eric Davis. Those guys would be perfect to answer that question. I'm going to politely punt.
Okay, all right.
As
that's
you
cool.
Next, Lou, if you could keep in mind just setting up the email between all of us to set up those interviews for those folks, we'd appreciate that.
Oh yeah, no, Lou followed me on Twitter. We're in. It's official.
Forgot. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, from one Cuban to another, bro. That's it. Like, and now I'm really in there. Yeah.
I got you.
Okay, Rather, what's our next question, my friend?
So Mav, great friend of the show, she asks, there's a paper shared by Christopher Mellon on 527 showing a correlation between UAPs and eco-contamination. She's wondering, did ATIP investigate this? And are there any metrics on contamination before and after a UAP event? And are variables like nuclear
we got a good
warships
crowd
in there?
We got a good crowd out there. Yeah.
Guys, man, you're asking fantastic questions. Holy smokes. That is something that we're certainly looking at. Look, anything that flies in our atmosphere, anything that interacts with our environment, changes the environment ever so subtly. Okay. And sometimes not so subtly, right? So obviously we want to be able to detect if there's any type of trace elements, residue, something that might be left behind. Yes, there is some data to suggest, especially as it deals with radiation, that there is some traceable signature left behind. Again, I want to be very, very careful not to go too far down that rabbit hole because there may be ongoing efforts to further explore that, and I don't want to do anything to maybe compromise those efforts. But that's true not just in the UAP topic. That's true anytime there's some sort of new technology being developed by a foreign adversary or we do it. It should be no surprise that we are interested to try to collect anything and everything we can. Those signatures are like a fingerprint, if you will, that's left behind, and that's very, very valuable because you can assess a lot of things to include capabilities and loiter time and whatnot and speeds, sometimes by what's left behind.
Yeah, that's a great answer, and we appreciate all these breadcrumbs you can give us. Kevin Childress had another question, which was on my mind as well.
He asked, Kevin's a great guy.
Yeah. He asked, why do you think paranormal events seem to afflict experiencers?
I paranormal events. Let me, if I may, I'm not an expert in paranormal events, but what I can say is that scientifically, by definition, everything is technically paranormal until it's no longer until it is normal. Okay, paranormal simply means outside or beyond what we consider to be the standard of if there is a standard of normalcy, right? And so para means outside of that. But this cell phone right here, 100 years ago, would certainly be considered paranormal. The fact that we're having a conversation like this over airwaves separated by thousands of miles in between each other would certainly be considered paranormal back then. And so my point is, everything by definition in the scientific community is paranormal until it becomes normal. So as far as the UAP phenomenon, if we want to use that and say that the UAP phenomenon is paranormal, then sure, because we don't understand it yet. I'll subscribe to that. But if we start going down the road of spiritual, paranormal, and poltergeists and ghosts and all the other Bigfoots and things like that. Again, I'm not saying no. What I'm simply saying is we don't have enough data yet to substantiate any of that. So rather than spend what little time I have bandwidth left, I tend to try to focus on that data that I can quantify and qualify. Not that other information isn't interesting. It is, but I simply don't have enough hours in the day to go down that, because it's too subjective. There's the evidence is purely from a person's point of view. And I don't have radar data on ghosts. I don't have anything, telemetry that I can put my finger on and say, yes, that is real. So I remain focused on the more nuts and bolts side of the house.
That makes sense. Yeah, we don't totally have the tools, but kind of speaking of tools and technologies, Brian W. asked another great question here. And so he says, personally, I think one of the most exciting things to come out of all this would be humanity's realization of what is possible technology-wise. My question to Luis is, what do you think would be one of the biggest positives to come from full disclosure?
Oh, man, that's another super question. Man.
I know our audience
we got a killer audience.
Wow.
Like, share, subscribe.
If we can learn to focus on the 90% of commonalities we have as a human species instead of focusing on the 10% differences, that would be, for me, the greatest accomplishment. Yes, I mean, one can argue, yes, what if we have the ability to evolve technologically millions of years in a single generation? Yeah, that's great, and improve humanity. But even more important than that for me is the ability for us to come together as a society, as a civilization, and as a species. And for the first time, truly put our differences aside and our fears, and instead focus on our commonalities, and then move together, progress together as a species.
Good answer.
What else you got, rather? Anything else?
Well, here's a good one from Zofa. This is an unofficial question. So if you want to answer unofficially and off the record, that's perfectly fine. They ask, what do you think a non-human entity piloting such a craft might look like? And this is, don't tell us from evidence. Just tell us, maybe what's on your mind, what you imagine.
Look, if nature has taught us one thing, there's a great deal of variety in the universe, but there's also some fundamental rules that everything abides by. Everything. So when you look at the world of fractal, you realize that from the neural connections in our brains to the blood capillaries in our bodies to the path lightning takes in the sky to the way water flows down a mountainside to the large Magellanic, the large supercluster galaxies in the universe that are millions of light years in distance, they all follow the same pattern. When you look at fractals, and when you see that commonality both biologically and in the physical world and in the cosmological world, that means there's something there. That means there's a blueprint. That there's a hidden key to the universe. And interestingly enough, that pattern isn't just in the physical world. When you look at human relationships, and you do, for example, even a link diagram of a terrorist network, you still see that same pattern. And so when you have that pattern repeating itself from a psychological perspective, from a physiological perspective, from a universal perspective, you have to realize that there are certain things that are common throughout the universe. For example, maybe radial symmetry, right? So if you look at a human being and you say, we have nothing in common with a starfish, yet I have a head, 2 arms, and 2 legs radiating from a central point. Well, so does a starfish. And if you look at my hand, I have 5 fingers radiating from a central point, right? And if you look at my feet, I have 5 toes radiating from a central point. All animals have that symmetry, right? And so, I mean, not all animals, of course, but a large majority do. So maybe if there is some sort of intelligent life out there or non-intelligent life, that they share that radial symmetry, because this is really, when I put my hand up, this is a fractal. You're starting here. It's just like a tree. When you look at a hand, it's the same pattern that a tree takes, that the veins on the leaves take. This is a common. You're looking at one of the rules of the universe, and we all have it. So maybe, again, without answering specifically what one might look like, there may be some commonalities that we share across the cosmos with other life forms.
Yeah, and that's very interesting. Maybe speaking about those kind of rules of the universe, we got another question. I'm sorry, I forgot who this was from, but the question was, so you shared intelligence regarding the retrieval of exotic materials and biomaterials. In your opinion, is there a possibility that we might have found a written language embodied in exotic materials? And if so, in your opinion, could we hope to read it?
Ooh.
Well,
and that'll be the final question, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go to what written language is. Okay. Written language is nothing more than a form of communication. And just like we're having this conversation now, I'm using my voice to communicate a thought. When I use a pen, I'm using a pen to communicate a thought. So written communication is a tool that allows us to communicate with each other without using our ears, right? Our ears are used for verbal language, or we use our eyes to decipher written language, okay? But at the end of the day, it's just communication. There are all sorts of ways to communicate with an individual, with a person, even an animal, a dog, a cat, a bird, right? If you see a dog looking at you and it starts snarling its teeth, it's communicating an intent. Okay. And that intent, you know damn well what it is. Okay. Even though a dog is a completely different species and the brain is wired different than ours, we can still interpret that communication. Just like if I'm across the hall and I go like this to you, I wave to you, I'm communicating with you. Okay. I may not be speaking, saying, hey, what's up there? Rather, but what I'm doing is communicating an acknowledgement. Hey, I'm here. You're there. I see you. What's up? Right. So as far as written language, we have to presume that anything that uses a written language, it's a logical presumption, not a fact, but it'd be a logical presumption that written language is there because an animal is using eyes, visual cues to communicate. Okay. That's what written language is used for. Otherwise, it's useless. You have to be able to see in order to understand written language, unless you're talking Braille. But that's not written language. That's a texture language, right? That's a tactile language.
Yeah.
So, is it possible that there are other species that have eyes like ours, complex and compound eyes with cones and rods, and they communicate that way? Well, when you look at all the species on Earth, a large majority of species, now we're not talking about microbial species, I'm talking about larger complex species with a vertebra, have eyes. That seems very common, whether it's a snake on the ground or it's a bird in the sky or a fish in the sea or a human being, right? The eyes have been with us as an evolution from a very early stage of organism development on this planet. It is part of a lot of complex species, most species, in fact. So it's probably not uncommon for us to presume, if it's so common here on this planet, it may very well be common for another life form, if another life form exists. And so therefore, again, I know I'm not answering your question directly because I have to be careful. I'm not going to go into specifics, but is it possible that there is written language for another species? Yeah, it actually could be quite probable. And so the question is, we have to speak the language, right? Symbols on the side of a desk can mean all sorts of things. I have a flag up here that's a symbol, right? There's no written words on it, but you know what it means, right? Well, if I was an alien species coming down here and I saw that for the first time, I would have no idea what the hell that means, right? There wouldn't be that symbology behind it. So we have to be very careful when we talk about written language, because what we consider written language may in fact not be written language at all. It may be actually something else.
Wow. Well, I saw my producer in the back room going, yes, yes, I love it. So
on behalf of the audience, thanks for all those answers, Lou. That was amazing.
Thank you, Lou. And
listen, let me caveat. They weren't answers; they were responses.
Right.
Please. I don't want people thinking Lou's got all the answers, because Lou doesn't have all the answers. Yeah. It was a response. You asked me. I gave you my personal opinion. In some cases, those opinions were informed by observation.
And we really appreciate it, because these are the fun conversations to be had. Just as long as it's always brought back to that terra firma that I had said before. What we know, and then anything past that, underneath that, pure speculation. But we could always come back to terra firma. So, Mr. Elizondo, Lou Elizondo, my friend, thank you so much for coming aboard, getting weird with us here. We got a Father's special coming up in July.
Yes, we do.
Hopefully that works out, where your dad, my dad, and the two of us are going to sit down, have a panel discussion about nothing to do with UFOs or UAPs. We're going to get to know Lou Elizondo, where he came from, who his family is, how he was raised, all of this, why he's got the mentality these guys can be killed. Arroz con pollo, croquetas.
Croquetas, man. Yeah. We're going to go into
cabecito. All of it. Man, dude, I cannot wait, man. And listen, I know it's Friday. I know you got some beers in the cooler, so go enjoy those beers. We really, really appreciate your time. And again, thank you. Thank you. You're welcome to come back anytime you want. You got something to say. You got something to talk about. The door is always obviously open for you, sir.
Gentlemen, it is my sincere pleasure, and I think we're going to be doing a lot of working together in the future. This is a joint endeavor. This is a mutual effort by everybody, and most importantly, your audience. Without the audience, there is no you, and without you, I can't do my job either. So the most important linchpin in this entire equation is your audience. And so thank you sincerely to every single person out there. I'm sorry I couldn't get to everybody's questions, but the ones you asked were fantastic, and I really looking forward to doing this again. And thank you all very much for tuning in. This was really special for me. Thank you.
Watch more podcast clips now on our YouTube channel. Go to Livewire Podcast Clips and watch more great podcast videos just like this one.